I have a real quick introduction. Welcome everyone to our first Zoom presentation for the Los Serenos docents. We're planning many more of these in the fall. Any problems today, please understand that we are growing with this and getting much better. Today, Megan Wolf, our native plant specialist, will talk about the El Segundo blue butterfly in our native garden.
Well, I'm glad you guys are all as excited as I am to be here. I really appreciate just the opportunity to speak with you guys. Believe it or not, I'm coming up on 5 years of managing the garden, and I'd love to do more with Los Serenos because you guys are such an important part of the education that happens here at Point Vicente. So my presentation is kind of choppy in a way of that I want to talk about the endangered El Segundo blue butterfly, but I also want to talk about just plants out here because I know that's helpful for you guys. Just to literally know a little bit more about each individual plant might be good. So I'm going to try to just start that a little bit in the presentation and do that a little bit outside too. Well, first off, can anyone tell me how I can't be participatory, but the butterfly that's featured in the first slide is a really shoddy cell phone picture of an El Segundo blue butterfly. I have some better ones before. All right. So this is a picture of the garden in 2017. I included that here because I thought it would be important to show you guys these plants. If you guys look at where all the stones are and all this bare bark and everything, there weren't any host plants there. And so this is just something that we've been able to accomplish within a couple of years. So host plants are Seacliff buckwheat. And so that was this species before, the white flowers. I have better pictures later. But we also see a lot of California buckwheat in the garden too. And so here's another picture of that. So California buckwheat also has those beautiful white flowers that you get with the Seacliff buckwheat. But in the fall, both of them turn into like kind of a rusty color. And so you're seeing that here. My point is there were literally hundreds of buckwheat in this garden, and we took it out. So you guys might have noticed over the years the garden's losing plants. And so it's really the difference between Seacliff buckwheat, which is the host plant for the butterfly, and California buckwheat. And so this is California buckwheat. And I probably should have had a slide here showing you how fine, they're like needle-like leaves. And that's the difference, needle-like versus leathery. And so this is the kind of difference that makes a make or break for a species, because California buckwheat actually attracts a lot of different pollinators. And it's so successful at attracting pollinators that those pollinators would then compete with the El Segundo blue butterfly, because the El Segundo blue butterfly only has one flight season. And if you have these moths that have like multiple seasons throughout the year, then that is really not easy for the El Segundo blue butterflies to do well. And so they've done some research, and we're kind of slow to the game on this because this research is pretty old, like in the late 90s, that shows that if you introduce this plant, you introduce competitors, but also parasitoids. And so that all can be really damaging to the populations for this butterfly that only has one host plant. And so those butterflies and other moths and parasitoids would also use the Seacliff buckwheat too. And so they found pretty successfully, you just remove California buckwheat and it does the trick. And so that's what we've been doing. So we've been killing a lot of native plants recently, but it's all for this guy. And so we're almost done. There's some plants that are still resurging, but you can see that this is the Seacliff buckwheat, and it has those white blooms. It looks like it's one flower when you look at it from far away, but when you look closely, they're like tiny little flowers in flower clusters. And you can see that through these close-up shots that I have. And so this is a male butterfly. The males are blue. We saw some yesterday, actually, when we were preparing for this, and they're very hard to find. So you can actually imagine how proud I am to have gotten this picture on my cell phone of one that's actually sitting still. Because the male butterflies are just moving around this season trying to find a mate. And I don't know how many of you guys know this, but they only live for 10 days.
Wow.
So the female butterfly is like the first and second day, they're already trying to make babies. And that's basically their life goal as an adult butterfly, is to make babies. And they do it, they deposit the oviposit on these flowers themselves. And you've got two butterflies who are looking at each other over in this last picture. And I show this picture to show you that.
Yeah, okay.
I think someone's on. But the underside of the butterflies have these designs, and they are very closely related to the San Bernardino blues. And so you have to really know your stuff to.
Oh, you want this here?
Oh, that's okay. I don't think anyone can see that. I'm just in my head. I'm doing that. But yeah. So you have these very precise designs, and so you have to study them to become qualified with a license. But we also have other little critters running around the garden, and so I wanted to show this just to point out two things. If you don't know this plant yet, it's called Bladderpod. And it's called Bladderpod, and I don't have a good shot here of it, but there's these little pods. When the flowers go to seed, they literally look like bladders. And they have these nice big brown seeds that fill in there. And the harlequin beetles use this plant, and so you'll almost always see a harlequin beetle out in the garden that's on this bladderpod. They're just associated with each other that way. And we also have hummingbirds that use this plant because of the trumpet shape. And so bladderpod has yellow trumpet-shaped flowers. It has a very interesting smell to it. Another name for it that we don't like to use, but you probably shouldn't use it, is called skunk bush. That's just because it's got a very unique smell. It's almost kind of capery, peanut buttery. You really have to smell it yourself to define it because it's not like anything else. It's bladderpod.
Yeah.
But that's what I have to say about that, I guess. We have a wide variety of plants in the garden, and a lot of them are in the sunflower family. So the picture to the left is a California bush sunflower, or Encelia californica. I don't know if you guys are trying to learn Latin with this, but Encelia is actually a nice way to refer to this plant. It's another one of the common names as well. And there's so many different types of sunflowers out here, but this is the most common one, and that's also native. And so this one has a ray flower, which I know you guys know is because it has all these petals arranged perfectly around the disc. And the disc is actually, I don't know if anyone knows this, but those are like multiple little flowers inside of it as well. So there's little micro flowers that are arranged in the purplish brown center. And so that's where all the seeds come from, is the center. So when these plants looks to be kind of brown, and it has everything collapsed down, all the seeds are going to be held right in the center of that plant. And so Sunflowers Asteraceae is the largest flowering family out there, and so I might refer to another plant as a sunflower outside as well. But they might not have ray flowers, so that's just something to note. There's like discoid heads, there's disc flower, there's all sorts of different types when you really get to know the family. But another fun thing, which I always like sniffing tours, is that if you guys have smelled the inside of it, you know it has kind of a weird chocolatey smell too. So I encourage you guys when you get out there, and I heard some people get out there almost every week, just feel free to kind of like touch a little bit of the plant and smell it too, especially if you haven't before. It's always a fun experience. So the plant to the right is the coastal poppy, Schultzia californica var marittima. That one I have there for you if you guys are taking notes. We have a local poppy plant that has more of a yellow color than an orange. And also the foliage looks kind of like a carrot top, but that foliage is also kind of more of a gray blue color. Poppies are really interesting because this is not a different species from, say, the inland poppy or the one that's our state flower. It's a variety, but the variety is so different and so special that here a lot of conservationists will rip out the inland poppies to keep the pure genetics of this poppy. So we see a lot of hybrids out here because a lot of times the mix can be polluted. And so like at White Point, for example, they are pretty intense about removing the orange poppies so that they don't produce more crops. But it's something that we want to think about too, just in general, is being careful about what we introduce into, especially natural spaces. You know, so we want to make sure that we have like the most pure seeds and everything. But also, everybody loves poppies, and so we have them all around the garden as much as we can. And I think we have some really nice populations of the coastal ones too. Awesome. So for folks who don't know, this is narrowleaf milkweed. I've kind of focused on a couple of plants that could be used by other pollinators. So I have a picture of on the right is a picture of a monarch butterfly using it. This is the food plant for the monarch butterfly. And we have a new section in the garden that's devoted to things like poppies, wildflowers, lupins. We have a couple of blue-eyed grass in there and a couple of native grasses, but also a ton of narrowleaf milkweed. And I was astounded that all this came from one plant. I planted one narrowleaf milkweed, and then I had basically a whole population covering a good portion of the garden. And so we're just allowing it to get out of control because I want to see if we can have some chrysalis coming up, a couple caterpillars roaming around. It'd be great to be able to host multiple butterfly species in the garden. But not just butterflies, right? We have all sorts of good things.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can see the flowers are actually quite striking on the left side. When they go to seed, they have these big cotton ball looking things in these big brown sac, which is not as attractive, but the cotton balls are great for wind dispersal. And so they'll just kind of fly around and propagate for themselves. And so I think that's how we were able to have so many without trying really. It just has really good dispersal mechanism. But yeah, so narrowleaf milkweed, Asclepias fascicularis, it's the local food plant for the monarch butterfly. A lot of people hear about tropical milkweed. That one is a Mexico native. So if you wanted to do, you know, give the monarchs what they should be having, it's the narrowleaf milkweed. This is just behind the narrowleaf milkweed. We have this beautiful fuchsia, and that's just another plant that the hummingbirds tend to love. It's called California fuchsia, and it's pretty easy to grow. It's, you know, it's got this like also kind of gray green color, and I think the striking pink color is something you don't see as much in nature, and so it's definitely worth trying that out on your own gardens. But also, if you really love hummingbirds, I highly recommend this plant. Yeah, and then this one, I couldn't do a quick little tour thing without some sages. So this is actually Cleveland sage on the left, and on the right, it's bee's bliss. So I just wanted to point out that we have lots of different sages in the garden. We have black sage, we have purple sage. Something that's common between all of them is they're all very aromatic. So if you're also looking to have a really aromatic garden, you want to consider these sages. Another thing they all have in common is that they have these whorls. So these little clusters where the flowers come out. And so those whorls are also where the seeds would come out later. And it's a really easy way to identify a sage is to see those whorls. They also have leathery leaves. They have stomata, like really hairy stomata. And so they're kind of like fluffy in a way. And the butterflies, or sorry, not the butterflies, the hummingbirds also love these plants, again, because of the trumpet shape. And so it's all about identifying those shapes and things that are loved by pollinators, but also bees. And it's funny, I got a picture of a bee on Bee's Bliss. That plant is a prostrate form of the sage. And so, you know, it'll be good for like if you wanted a ground cover, or and a really beautiful ground cover at that. Or if you had like a ordinance about ocean views or something, is something to consider. We don't have an ordinance at the garden, but we do have this need to keep everything short enough for people to have views for their weddings and things like that here. And so I'm always considering shorter plants. And then Cleveland sage is just a really beautiful variety. I'm gonna show it to you when I walk out. It's got this striking, more like bluish purple, which is very different from our more local purple sage. But yes, they smell amazing. Definitely want to go for those. And I figured I couldn't do a presentation without a little bit of cactus in it. We do have cactus that is just kind of hidden around the garden at this point because things have gotten so large. It's kind of entertaining for volunteers because we have so much cactus that's popped up around here. And this one is prickly pear cactus. And you can see we've got those nice straight spines coming out of the fleshy pads on the left. And then on the right, you can see this beautiful yellow flower. And that flower is going to turn into a tuna. And actually, I don't know if you guys know, it's a delicacy. You can eat the tunas if you remove the seeds, but they're very tasty.
What does it look like?
The tunas look really similar. They're like a red color, but it's like a red pear almost. It looks kind of a red pear. So just a little fact about that. And of course, we don't have any cactus wrens in the garden, but this is the plant that the cactus wrens use for their own survival. And I want to show you guys just a quick view of some of the grasses that we have in the garden. I'll show you one when we walk out. It's called deer grass. And then we also have these other varieties, the canyon, Lamus condensatus, the ryegrass. And there's this huge bush off to the left here. That one is called the Lycium brevips, it's Baja desert thorn. And that's a Catalina variety, but it gets to be very huge. So in the summertime, that we can eat the little berries. They're related to like those goji berries. And so they're really tasty. If you haven't tried them yet, I totally recommend it. Just look for little red berries on there. But that plant gets to be huge. So a lot of what we're trying to do is inspire people to, you know, have these plants in their homes, but also to preserve things that are maybe more threatened. And so this is a less common species. And so that's why we have it in the garden, but I wouldn't recommend it for backyards unless you guys have a lot of space. And the same thing goes for the one right behind the deer grass there towards the ocean. There's a lemonade berry plant that's quite large as well. And then on the foreground here, I do have some more sages, and if you guys, this is kind of a test for you because I don't have anything labeled in here, but you can see they have the whorls, and these are the local ones, the purple sages that have kind of more of a white color rather than a gray blue. And the plants are actually also have a lighter color pink, pinkish purple. So a lot of this maintenance and work is done by volunteers. And so I have a couple pictures of volunteers here. They're doing things like ripping out California buckwheat. That's actually what they're doing in that first photo there. We have volunteers, but all sorts of sizes, such as Kaya here is actually helping us to collect some of those berries from the Baja desert thorn. And then we can process that at the Land Conservancy nursery and then have new plants. And typically we get a good sized group.
Wow.
Yeah, but there's always room for more. And this is really the wrong time to be bringing up volunteers and talking about it because we don't have any right now due to COVID. But in the future, I hope when our program resurges, we would love to have docents out there. Because even if you're not super stoked about pruning or doing any particular task, also just having people out there who are informed and able to talk a little bit about the plants as they're working out there is great. But if anything that I've done today, if you're feeling more confident about native plants and talking about them, that is a win for me. So I wanted to point out, this is one of the signs that we have in the garden. So I don't want you to feel like frazzled, like you had to write down everything or the information wasn't out there. So this sign is out in the garden right now. So if you ever are feeling like, oh man, I really want to just brush up a little bit on some of those species, you can just read these signs. I can send this around too if it's helpful. But this actually goes over a lot of the plants that we talked about.
You want me to send them to the docents if they express an interest?
Sure. And we can maybe have that in the questions. If you guys want this, you know, you can have it, but also you have it every time you walk out in the garden. It's just there. One of the plants that is included here that I haven't talked about is the island green dahlia, which is a dahlia that only exists here and on Catalina Islands. And so it's a threatened plant, and it has succulents, and I think it's really beautiful too. It has a long flowering stalk with star white flowers. Okay, so this is the end of this presentation. I wanted to point out some other resources, like Ann Dahlke and Yvetta Williams put out a wildflower book that's available in the gift shop. There's a book that I really like for plant identification called Flora of the Santa Ana River. We also have that sign and the brochures in the garden as just really easy access resources. I also have my email here. So if you guys want to talk, just reach out to me. Maybe you're not comfortable in the chat. You can just jot that down and reach out if you want to talk about anything garden related. This is just a real snippet of what's out there. There's a lot more information. So if you have something particular or a plant in particular you want questions about, I would absolutely love to hear from you. And now I'd love to hear your questions.
Okay, if everyone would like to unmute your mics right now. Megan, while everyone is doing that, we do have one question from Sherry who would like to know, I think you may have alluded to it in your presentation after she asked, but what kind of milkweed do monarch butterflies like most?
So I heard from a place that has like monarch information is they like the tropical milkweed and some of those other types of milkweed better than the native kind. And that's just kind of like eating ice cream versus eating salad. Like the narrow leaf milkweed is good for them and keeps them from getting confused for their migration patterns, but they like the tropical milkweed. Is tastier. That's a good question.
And Anne, we've had a couple of requests for a picture of the signage that's out in the garden.
All right.
Okay.
and we'll send it to you.
Paul Funk wants to know, is the Mariposa lily a native species?
Was the Mariposa lily? Absolutely. Yes, it's one of our more special bulbs, and I don't yet have that in the garden, but it's one of my dreams. I got some blue dicks. I know, weird name. Those are some of the bulbs that we do have in the garden that are still surviving, but I struggle with that. You know, we've got dogs who like to come off leash and into the garden, and sometimes just children roaming in. So another thing that I'm working on is getting some very loose signage or loose fencing just to keep people out of the garden so that we don't lose out on some of the bulbs. Because the last bulb that I put in there before the blue dicks was right where all the kids like to slide on the amphitheater, if you know what I'm talking about. It was right on the corner there.
Okay, that's all the questions, unless anyone else has a question right now for Megan.
Megan, how do you have those signs outside mounted? Or are they in the brochure?
Well, so are you talking about, there's a couple different signs. So we've got the plant tag signs, and then we've got the big sign. Is that
One that you showed.
Yeah, that one is mounted on a metal frame. That's we mimicked the MPA sign that was out there, and it was just at a slight angle on a metal frame.
We have a lot of poaching of the cactus flowers, what did you call them? The
tuna.
Tuna. What can we do to stop that? Because there's 3 or 4 different locations where you can see they just slice them off.
Yeah, I actually haven't dealt with any tuna poaching before. That's really interesting, actually, to me. But I think the best thing you could do is you put in signage. It's funny, cactus is usually the plant you put in to keep people out of doing stuff. You know, like you would put in maybe a cholla, I guess. Next level is
Next level cactus.
put some cholla around your prickly pear cactus. But yeah, that's strange. I don't have the answer.
Yeah, it's in the western side of the lower part of Portuguese Bend.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Mariposa lilies over there too.
Mm-hmm.
So plants and
Another question from the crowd. Paul Funk would like to know about Indian paintbrush. Is that native and is it a parasitic plant?
So Indian paintbrush is actually a really cool plant. It's hemiparasitic. And so hemi means semi, so it does do its own photosynthesis, but it uses the roots, like the water and the roots from the other plants. I don't have that in the garden yet, but you can find it at Forestal Reserve. I spread seeds in the garden. And the way I did it is I put the seeds in near the black sage, because black sage is kind of the host plant for that hemiparasite. So it's not bad, it's native, and it just has a really cool adaptation where it doesn't collect its own water and nutrients.
And then Adela, you had raised your hand. I'm not sure if you have a question. If you're
made it, yay.
Yes, I do. I have a lot of bush sunflower, and the birds don't eat it. I let the flower head die, and it turns into like a little clump of little miniature sunflowers like we get at the store, and they won't eat it. But if I take that little clump and put it in the bird feeder, then they will eat it.
Interesting.
So
Huh.
I don't know if these are the wrong kind of birds, that they won't land on the plant and eat the seed right there and then. They're house finch.
It sounds like those house finches trained you, Adela. And
Oh, I'm going, you guys are making me do all the work. I'm swearing at them every time I have to go get them for them.
yeah, I don't know much about that either, honestly. I mean, these are just fun observations you get in your own gardens, which is great. But these animals are adapted to do this themselves, so they should be able to. They might just be getting spoiled by you.
I think they're very spoiled. They're very spoiled, and they get crushed, real, our kind of sunflowers too. So that spoils them. I give it to them, and they are eating the elderberry, and I've actually caught photos of them with a berry in their mouth, so that's great. But I eat the elderberry myself when it gets dusty blue. And Tony, you know Tony, right? I can't remember his last name.
Tony Baker.
He said, be careful about eating the elderberry. Don't eat too much. So I don't know.
So when you come in, there's a sign on the entrance saying no.
Oh, it could be a little toxic. Okay.
Why? What is the problem with eating too many elderberries?
Because it'll affect your stomach. But I eat hands full of them, and I give them to my neighbors and the little kids, and everybody likes them.
Yeah, I guess they have like a little bit of toxicity, I think is what he's concerned about. So the safest way to consume them would be like in a jam where you've boiled it out. Yeah.
Don't they make elderberry wine?
Yes, I used to make elderberry wine when I was back on the East Coast. So I think that not only is it toxic, but probably is a little bit alcoholic.
No wonder I like it so much. Not the toxic part.
Yeah, he didn't want you to have too much fun.
No, and my neighbors love it. They're always coming over and asking me for some.
And
Well,
Anyways, thank you.
Amy commented that, is there tannin in elderberry wine?
Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
it does have tannins. Mm-hmm.
So it'll give you a headache.
Right. So maybe that's another reason not to overdo it.
Well, they're so tiny, those berries, that I don't think you could really get a huge amount unless you had a grove of them. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm allergic to tannins, and it's never bothered me. I can't drink red wine.
Well, does anyone else have any other questions about the garden? Because I was going to go outside and see if we could see an Elskana blue butterfly together, but we'll see. It's a little windy, a little cloudy today.
This is Susan Allowert again, and the Catalina Dudley,
Dudleya.
how do we get them? Where can we purchase them? You don't want people taking them out of the garden.
No, absolutely not. And that's actually a problem up and down the coast. I don't know if you guys are aware, there's a such thing as Dudleya poaching.
No.
And we've seen some poaching here on the peninsula, not much, but they can sell them for a lot of money in China.
Wow.
So it's kind of where it's, yeah.
Those Chinese.
But
What do they do with it?
they just sell them to people for like a lot of money per pop, and they just make a bunch of money doing that. But that is a side note. So the Dudleya, the best way to get it is, please don't poach it, is to buy it at a local nursery. And I happen to also work with the Land Conservancy, which is the closest nursery here. And they are offering sales online. So you can go to their website and look up the plants, and you can actually request online orders of plants.
Would you give us the website, please?
Sure. It's P as in Peter, V as in Victor, P as in Peter, L as in Lester, C as in Carrie. So pvplc .org.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Good questions. Yeah, we want you guys to be using the local seed and everything, especially if you guys live around here. Also, just a note for the Seacliff buckwheat, if you happen to live in a neighborhood between the garden and say another natural space that's right on the bluffs, it's very valuable for you to be planting Seacliff buckwheat, the host plant for the Elskana blue butterfly, because that means that we could potentially have more populations developing.
I have a question also. Is the El Segundo blue butterfly the same butterfly as the Palos Verdes blue butterfly?
Absolutely not. No. So they're very different butterflies. They have different seasons too. So the Palos Verdes blue butterfly looks very different for the underside. If you look it up. And they also, their season is in the spring. So like February through the end of June at the latest, you'll see a Palos Verdes blue. And they have different host plants. So the Palos Verdes blue butterfly has rattlepod and deerweed host plants. So, oh yeah, I see Paul Funk's note. Another resource is Theodore Payne, yep. And there's also Tree of Life down to the south. I've tried to buy plants from both of those places, and I've done it for the garden too. And they can be a little bit of a drive, but it's actually exciting to visit these places when they're open. During COVID, you can't actually purchase them at Theodore Payne. I tried. But sorry, I was on a tangent there. But yeah, Palos Verdes blue, different from Muscone blue.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought one of the questions might be the difference between California buckwheat and Seacliff buckwheat, but I can't actually show you that anymore.
Why
These
not?
are, well, I can go and try to find a little piece, but it's because we removed so much California buckwheat.
Ah.
But I can, maybe I'll try to grab a little sprig of one that's trying to grow back.
Megan,
Yes.
this is Adela. I have a question. I live in North Redondo Beach, which is about 1.25 miles inland.
Yeah.
And I have both kinds of buckwheat, the Seacliff and the California buckwheat. Is there,
Oh, I was gonna say you have to be like right on the dunes to be a site for
okay.
this is gonna be butterfly.
Because I
Yes.
was getting a tiny little blue butterfly. I don't know what kind it was. Oh, it's probably a hair
Probably
streak.
a marine blue.
Just a little blue one. I'm thinking it was like a hair streak or something, maybe.
It could
Kind of
be.
Bluish sky. It wasn't like the ones that you have with the color on the backside. And I was wondering, is there any possibility the Audubon just did a butterfly count this weekend, and I couldn't see hardly any butterflies like I used to, but I did see quite a few hornets. Could they be scaring away the butterflies?
Absolutely, that could absolutely be an issue. As you know, the El Segundo blue has all these sensitivities, and so I can imagine it would be. Oh, and I don't know if I can get this in the frame, but there's a California gnatcatcher using the garden right now. That's another one of the species that uses the garden. Yeah, I don't see it right now, but I heard it. Maybe you guys heard it too. But let's see if we can try to find some of these blue butterflies. But yeah, you guys can see the difference in the leaves here. This is the California buckwheat.
Is there a plane flying over?
There is totally a plane flying over, and I see some butterflies. There we go. They're super hard to see because they're just flitting around.
It's funny, Adela, I've been seeing a ton of butterflies on my hikes lately, more than I've ever seen. I saw one interesting the other day that was white with black speckles. I had never seen that.
Whoa, white and black speckles.
Was
That's
white.
That's called a cabbage white.
Oh, yeah, okay. We saw one quickly. The best times to view these butterflies is when it's really sunny out and not windy. They'll be just flying around. And so it's windy and cloudy out, so we may not see them. But yeah, here's another view at those beautiful poppies. And we've got this cactus growing here. This is actually one of my favorite plants that I didn't talk about. This one is called Sagebrush. And I'll wait for the plane.
Thank you.
No worries. So this is one that I love to talk about when I am talking about the sunflower family, because so many people mistake it. They think it's a sage, but look at this sage. This is the purple sage, and it has these whorls. The stem that's the cross section is actually a square stem, and you don't have a square stem here. It's branched, and the flowers on this, which I don't see any right now, they're flower heads like a sunflower. And so it's a sunflower, but it smells really good. So that's where it gets its name Sagebrush from. Because what you want to do every time you get out here is just grab a little bit of this and smell it. And it's really a crowd pleaser when you guys are doing your little tours out here. But it's also the favorite of the California gnatcatcher, that bird we just saw. So yeah, any questions about the sagebrush? Cool. Yeah, and so, you know, we have lots of different sages. I mentioned this plant, Rattlepod. That's the host plant for the Palos Verdes blue butterfly. So we have a lot of host plants in here for butterflies. It would be really cool if we got the Palos Verdes blue butterfly also in the garden. But we're obviously focused on, with all these Seacliff buckwheat everywhere, getting that Alsgona blue nice and happy. And I've seen it every time I've come down here during this season, so I recommend you guys check it out. Come out here, mid-July is the best time to find it, but you can come out as early as late June through August. So we're gonna maybe circle back one more time. Here's a nice little plant distraction right here. Anybody know what this is? We're on to the quiz section. No, this one is a
That evening primrose?
yeah, very good. Yes, evening primrose. It's not one you'll see on the peninsula very much. It's a dune species, but I thought it was appropriate to put a dune species next to another dune species to support for pollinators. But let's just see if we find any more. We totally saw one. You probably didn't see it in the phone. Yeah, it's tough. It's touch and go. But you guys can also see that the plants start with these nice white flowers and they get to this burgundy color. And so when the plant has all to the burgundy color, the season is over. Let's see. We planted a lot of other plants out here, but they're so closely integrated with the flowers. The season is for the butterflies because they use the flower the most. We don't see a whole lot of action on these immature plants.
Megan, Paul Funk wants to know, he's had a tough time explaining the difference between rattlepod and bladderpod. Can you give us some differences?
Sure, I'd love to. I might circle back to some.
We lost you. Megan?
Looks like she might have frozen.
Yeah. When we did the practice yesterday with her, if she gets too far away from the building, the signal gets too weak and we lost her. She'll come back though. Megan?
Can you call her?
Yeah, we don't have her she's using the phone to do the tour.
Oh.
She'll come back.
I'm back.
Yay, we lost you, Megan.
Yay.
She's using Wi-Fi.
You know what? I don't know if I'm using the.
Yep, we lost you again, Megan.
Hold on. And
You know,
am I good?
You're on.
Wi-Fi might even be better because I find it very hard to get a signal there at PVIC.
I'm on the Wi-Fi and it seems to be working okay. But yeah, so anyway, long story long. So alternate leaves is what a pinnate structure is. They also have white flowers that look like pea pods. But yeah, the actual pods look pretty similar. And so I'll show that to the Bladderpod that's up here. We have a pretty good sized Bladderpod. This is one example. So obviously, well, we've got these harlequin beetles, which is great. See, I told you, you always see the harlequin beetles on there. But also these leaves are different. So instead of the pinnate alternate leaf structure, this has 3 leaves on a leaflet. These are little leaflets. And so that's different. They also have these striking yellow trumpet flowers. And the pods, I mean, they look a little different, but I can see where you could draw the connection here. Does that help, Paul?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I think the main thing is just focusing on the leaves. A lot of people want to talk about the flowers. In this case, the flowers are really different, so you want to bring that up for sure. But when you don't have flowers, you just have to compare the leaves of 2 plants and figure it out that way.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, of course. And then let's see. I'm actually starting to see some of these. Let's see if I can try to find some flowers from this. Thank you. Oh, here we go. So you can see the flowers from the sagebrush a little bit. They're really small. But these are what we would call a discoid head for flower head. Yeah. Are there any plants in the garden that anyone wants to just chat about that I should just rush over to? I like to keep it open-ended like that.
I'd like to know how to propagate Dudleya.
Well, you can do it from the seeds.
Okay.
So if you're trying to find the seed,
Well, I mean, I have a lot
here.
of Dudleya. I have them in my yard. I just
you
wanted to
have
multiply them.
Right. Well, you could do it. There's a couple of different ways. So you could do it where you just take off one of these guys and you let it dry out for 2 weeks, and then you do a vegetative propagation. That's what we call a clone. You could clone it, or if you want high diversity, you take these guys, which are the flower heads that are now gone to seed, and then you can collect all these seeds. And the problem that you might run into there is that it takes a long time to grow these. They're slow growers. So I've got all these seeds here. I'm gonna just spread them in the garden, but it could be probably a year until I see anything significant.
Do they like the shade better than the sun?
No, they prefer the sun. And I mean, they're like a desert plant. So they don't really like water after June or anything either. So try not to water them in this. Have you been watering them in the summer?
Okay, because I've got, yeah, I have them on a drip system. I'll take them off. And they're not doing well, but the ones that are just in pots that I never water are gorgeous.
Oh, see, that's the trick. Overwatering sometimes is a big deal for these plants. And I was going to mention too, for anyone who doesn't know, this one is golden bush, and it's one of its benefits is that it's a fall bloomer. And so when everything else is starting to, what's that?
This is getting ready for the fall.
Yep, a lot of these are getting ready to bloom. These have like little flower buds. It's when it starts turning into fall, this is like one of the few things that is still blooming, and so it's nice to have that late bloomer. but yeah, this is the sign. It's not looking great. It's not holding up very well, but it is a resource for sure.
Can you send that to me, or do you want me to take a picture?
Megan,
Oh, I was thinking you could just take it off the PowerPoint. Yeah, what's
okay,
going on?
good.
is it too late in the year to see California Snapdragons?
California Snapdragons? No, I mean, we have some of it. It might be actually, let me see. Yeah, this one never did very well. We don't really have a whole lot of California Snapdragon in the garden except for the Baja variety. And that one is still flowering. I don't know if that was a garden specific question or just in general, but we could try looking over there. I was just taking you guys out all over the place.
And while you're traveling, Lai wants to know which plant only has 3 leaves and it's trumpet-shaped flower. Is that the bladderpod?
That was the bladderpod, yes. So yeah, sorry, it was the rattlepod versus the bladderpod. And here's another glimpse of the bladderpod. They have these big woody structures.
Oh, wow.
And they have these gorgeous trumpet-shaped flowers and these bladderpods where this used to be a flower and now it's a seed. So, yeah, so the California fuchsias are still going right now. These are cactus that are turning into tuna right here. When it turns red, it should be ripe.
Now, Megan,
and
on the cactus, you can eat the, you there? Megan? Megan? Megan?
I'm out of here.
Do you hear us?
How's it going? Are you guys?
We lost you there for a while.
I didn't hear you for a minute. Okay, I lost you too. I was like, what is happening?
Maybe that part of the path.
It's probably got into the part where we're a little out of signal. We didn't try this yesterday.
This side of the path.
But yeah, I wanted to point out, yeah, these are Baja Snapdragons. So you say, do we have both coast prickly pear and smooth-skinned beavertail? I have not heard of smooth-skinned beavertail. But anyway, so this one is the Baja Snapdragon. And it has, it's a Galvesia juncea. It has these very, almost juncus-like, which is what they're comparing it to, botanically speaking. A very long, spindly, kind of almost sedge-like. But these are beautiful red trumpet-shaped flowers. Again, red trumpet-shaped flowers, favorites for hummingbirds. Any other questions?
Yeah, Megan, I have a question about the lemonade berry.
Okay.
I planted 2 of them about 4 years ago, and neither they bloom and then the blooms fall off. I never get berries, but yet I was hiking today and the hills are full of lemonade berry plants with berries. Is there anything that I can do to promote berry production?
I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of a weird one. They should be producing every year. So, sorry, no answer on that one.
Are they like the coyote bush where they need male and female or something?
That's what I was just thinking. I was going to look it up. I don't think they're dioecious. I think it should be all happening on the same plant. But I'll look it up. I definitely will be looking at that.
Yeah. Is there a possibility I could have gotten sugar bush by mistake?
Well, the sugar bush also produces the red berries, though, too.
Well, I don't think it produces the lemonade berry, though, does it, with the syrupy outside?
Yeah.
Well, then either way, I'm getting nothing.
Megan,
Let's see.
Paul Funk wants
Yep.
to know, do we have both coast prickly pear and the smooth skin beaver tail in our garden?
So yeah, I've never heard of the smooth skin beaver tail. That's different. But I know we do have coast prickly pear, and we do have some choya too. I have a section that's what we follow this lady. I have a section that's devoted to being all Baja, and I did that because I have a nice big coast prickly pear there. We also do have agave hidden in here too.
Oh, wow.
But there should be some choya as well, so just kind of watch yourself. Mostly coast prickly pear though. It's a little bit friendlier. But yeah, and then we have a really nice deadly everends here. Cool. Yep, this is the coast prickly pear. Yeah, we did a bunch of the coast prickly pears.
Closer together than the other guys.
Yeah, that's just a smaller plant.
Oh.
That's good questions. Okay, any other questions?
Anybody? Last chance? Last call?
I have a question.
Sure.
Put my go on here. I've heard that the biological clocks of the insects and the plants are getting out of sync because of the climate change. I'm just wondering if that's an issue here on the peninsula.
It is something we're considering on the peninsula, not in the garden, because I don't have that kind of bandwidth. But I know that the Conservancy is studying the phenology, which is the timing of plants for the host plants of the Palos Verdes blue butterfly. And so they're looking at deerweed and rattlepod and when they're blooming, and then when the peak butterfly season is happening, and seeing if they're getting out of sync or not. And that's something that they think is an issue for that species in particular, on how it has not been recovering very easily. Good points though. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we're probably experiencing. Luckily though, it seems to be well timed for this El Segundo blue population we've got going here. They're just hiding because it's all windy right now, but they're, you know, I saw up to like 7 in one bush just last week. So they're doing pretty good. And they love the garden. I got to figure out what my formula is here at the garden that seems to be better than everywhere else, because we want to help replicate our success so we can have more and more butterflies all up and down the coast, not just here.
I wanted to just break in here for a second to thank Anne for putting so much work into creating this for us, Megan for this really helpful presentation, and to the Thorns for all their tech knowledge and getting us on Zoom okay. Bravo.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, big thanks to everyone else.
I want to thank you all too. It's very important, and I know it's got to be hard to put all of us together since we're just learning little bits, but I really appreciate it.
Oh, good. Very good. Well, thank you guys all for your time out here. I know you guys can be doing anything right now, and you decided to learn a little bit about some of these species with me. So I really appreciate you guys and hope we can collaborate more in the future. I'm excited.